Hello and welcome to your quick guide to telephone and video interviews with me, Lucy Shenton from the Careers team. In terms of what we're going to look at in the video, we're going to look at the format of the interview, the research and preparation that goes into producing a really effective interview, tech considerations, how we might go about addressing questions, and also the support that we offer at the Careers team. In terms of the interview format you may face, there's the pre-recorded video interview, which is quite different from a face-to-face interview. You'll be asked a number of questions via software. You'll then pre-record those answers, and that will then be sent to the employer to look at it at a time that suits them. So quite different. Then we have the live video and telephone interviews, which are pretty much exactly what you would expect in a face-to-face interview, just either done via video conferencing software like Zoom, MS Teams, FaceTime, Skype, whatever it may be, or simply just by calling you via the telephone. But no matter which of these sort of interview formats you face, you're going to prepare pretty much the same way. You really need to feel that you understand the job, the organisation and yourself. So in terms of the job, you'll want to look at things like the person specification, which lists all of the criteria they're going to be assessing you against. So all the skills, the experience, and personal attributes that they're going to be looking for. That's going to be really, really helpful for you to be able to predict the sorts of questions that they might ask you. So you know that if they're looking for skills like teamwork or leadership, more than likely they're going to ask you questions around those. So use that as your guide to predicting what might come up in an interview. Also, really understanding the job description is going to give you the ability when you're asked those questions like, why do you want this job? What interests you in the position? This is going to give you that ammunition then to actually talk about that in some real depth and detail. So understanding the job, really, really important to help to predict particular questions that might come up, but also then be able to demonstrate your motivation to actually apply for the job. Broadening that out slightly, you want to think about the organisation as a whole. So think about what it actually does, its service, its product, the values that underpin how it works, maybe the culture, competitors. And you can do this by, yes, going on their website and just having a look at the information they put out there about themselves, but also think about social media, think about following them, think about how they're portrayed in the media, any stories that come up about the sector. Really broaden that out because, again, that's going to really help you to be able to answer questions effectively that are around your motivation and interest in the sector, in the organisation. So questions like, why do you want to work for us? What is it that interests you about the sector? Unless you've done that research, it's really difficult to answer those sorts of questions. Then you need to really think about you, what you've got to offer, what have you done that differentiates you from other candidates, and you're going to need to match yourself to the job and to the organisation as well. So you need to really reflect on yourself, think about, well, what skills have I got, my experience, my knowledge. More importantly, just think about how am I going to evidence my suitability to the job and to the organisation. So you need to have both. So where we really see that difference in terms of preparation for interview over video specifically is in all that tech setup. So really this is just a note to say, get familiar with any necessary software that you're going to be using for the video interview. So you may be familiar with particular types of software like maybe Zoom or FaceTime, whatever it may be, but it may be that you're actually interviewing via a different platform. So if you've not used it before, really think about downloading it well in advance of when you've got that interview and play around with it. Actually call somebody, using that software, feel comfortable with all of the sort of functionality of it. And that's just going to allow you then to really focus just on providing a really effective interview rather than messing around with tech or feeling distracted by it. Think about your Wi-Fi and think about where you're actually going to be positioned, therefore, to make sure that you have good connectivity. Again, you just don't want to be distracted by the signal going in and out, the connection being lost and what have you. So consider that as well. Make sure that if you're using a laptop or phone, whatever it may be, that it's charged and you don't need to worry about that. And again, just play around with that with the webcam and your audio setup. Make sure that you are coming in clearly, that they can hear you. And again, really that playing around beforehand, maybe with somebody else, is going to help you to be able to feel confident with that. Other things to think about with video setup. So your webcam should be at eye line so that you are able to give as much as possible eye contact with the person that you're engaging with via video. And that goes for live or pre-recorded video interview. You want your light to be coming behind the device you're using so that you are illuminated, that you're not actually then cast in shadow, and they can see you really, really effectively. That's going to help with all that body language and gestures that really sort of help you with your communication. You really want them to be focused on you, and so just you, head and shoulders in, and just go as neutral as you possibly can in your background. You do not want them to be distracted by anything going on there, and also that goes for anybody coming in. So make sure that nobody is going to burst into your room, that they know that this is coming up, anyone else in your household has been prepped, and that they're not going to play music or distract you in any way. Because again, you just want to stay focused on delivering the answers to the questions. Also think about your presentation. So just because it's on video doesn't mean that you should be professionally dressed. So make sure that you dress exactly how you would if you go into a live face-to-face interview. In terms of addressing questions, they can pretty much ask you anything in an interview, and it's difficult to predict exactly what you're going to be asked. But this might be helpful in just giving you a bit of a feel of the sort of breadth of styles of questions that you may be asked. As I mentioned earlier, motivation is something that they're always interested in, and they're probably going to ask you about. I'd say in 90% of jobs, interviews, you're going to be asked, why did you apply for this job? So, thinking about your motivation, and maybe even broader, thinking about what is your general career ambitions, where do you see, this particular job going? Because they can all really help sell that fact that you're really committed to an organisation, that you're interested in, professional development and so forth. So really spend some time thinking about, why are you applying for that job? What interests you in the organisation? Because, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be asked a question based on motivation. Then you might be asked something around strengths, which maybe is a little bit less obvious why you're being asked these questions, a little bit less direct. And they could just be asking you to think about what achievement you're particularly proud of, or what subject you really excelled and enjoyed whilst you're at university. And this is really them just trying to get to grips a little bit further into, what is it that really gives you energy? Where do you really excel? Where are you really comfortable? Again, this is always going to be going back into what they're looking for. So if you can link that into maybe the personal attributes they're looking for, and they've given you via that person specification, then that's going to be really effective. So really just think about answering these questions in a considered way, but just being honest, giving detail, and just focusing as much as possible on sort of where you are different and what's unique about you. And then the more obvious questions are the competency-based questions, and these really are just trying to showcase your skills via the medium of you discussing prior experience. So these are sorts of questions that tell us about a time when you've demonstrated really effective customer services. Talk about a time when you've led a team to success. So it's what are they looking for in terms of skills, and then asking you to evidence those via your prior work experience. And when we say work experience, that can be academia, that could be voluntary, that could be paid positions you've had, and it can be relevant or not directly relevant to the career that you're going into. So really this is just, again, about that preparation that you'll already have done about evidence. So when have you gained those skills before? What examples really, really will exemplify, that skill and how you've used it previously. Now, if you're not familiar with this STAR framework, this is a really effective way of delivering that information. So when you're evidencing your skills, talking about prior experience, do it in this format, and it just keeps you focused, keeps you on track, and it gives the detail that they're really looking for. SNT stands for situation and task, which is really just a brief overview about kind of when was this, where was it, and then task, what were you trying to do? Really, really brief, just to give a bit of context to the example. Then you're going to really focus in on what did you actually do? Where are the actions? And this is a really important bit. This is the bit that actually demonstrates you understand how to use the skill. So focus on what you did, focus on detail here about exactly what actions you took, and then always follow it up with the result. So how do you know you were successful? You had this task, you did all of these things, you took all this action, but actually how do you know you were effective? So that could be if it's a piece of work that you're producing, the grade you received, maybe it's peer feedback, maybe it's a promotion you got. So always just follow that up with a result. So this is really, as I said, effective when you're evidencing any prior work experience and keeping you nice and focused on addressing that question effectively. Other things to consider about addressing questions and interviews in general. Really think about the fact that you are going to be understandably nervous, and so expect it and prepare for it. Also, don't worry too much about it affecting your performance. Everybody's nervous. The interviewer may themselves be nervous, and they will understand that. And actually, it just shows that you find, that you think it's important and that you're putting maybe a lot of time and energy into it. So expect it, and then just do whatever you need to do to keep that under control. Things like clarifying questions, taking time to answer questions can really help to keep yourself focused and to keep clear. So don't be afraid of doing that. If you're not sure what question they're really asking, just ask them to rephrase it, or maybe you yourself talk about, sort of what you think they're asking you, and just make sure that that's right. And take time. You don't have to answer at the minute that they stop asking that question. So take a minute. And just keep yourself focused. And you can always, if you've got into an answer and you start thinking, maybe I've gone away from what I'm trying to say here, you can bring yourself back. You can just say, oh, I just want to make sure I'm answering the question effectively here. And you can, again, take that pause and take that time. Remember, there is no right or wrong answer in an interview. Really what they're looking for is that you give detail and that you do that hard work of getting that evidence across to them. So don't feel like it's right or wrong and you just need to stop talking as long as you've just answered that question as you think that it should be done. Really just think about producing that evidence and producing that detail that they're going to want to hear about. And don't forget that this is an opportunity for them to meet you. So it's not just about how you answer the questions, it's about how you're coming across. So make sure that you use all that body language. If it's on a telephone, that you use the inclination in your voice. If it's on video, think about your gestures. Think about, seeming engaged when they're talking, smiling, and so forth. So don't forget all of that other sort of non-verbal communication that you're giving them on interview. And make sure that you do it as effectively as you can. Okay, so preparation key with interviews. Spend time with not only the tech, but also maybe thinking about what they might ask about and thinking about how you're going to evidence and address those questions. And then when you're actually in interview, just think about calming yourself as much as possible. Think about that warmth, think about giving the detail and giving the depth, and always focusing on that evidence for what they're looking for. In terms of where you can get more support, and with interviews, video and telephone, I would say really the more practice you can get in, the absolute better, the more comfortable you're going to feel, and hopefully then the more effective you will be going forwards. We do have a recorded interview software, Shortlist Me, that's going to be available to you. So that's great in preparing for pre-recorded video in the future. And you can also do some live practice as well on video conferencing or telephone, whichever you've got coming up, and we can actually run through questions and then give you loads and loads of supportive feedback to help develop you in that particular skill. And we'll have a whole host of digital resources on the Careers 24/7 platform as well. So lots of support there. And as I said, it's really just about getting practice and getting comfortable with the interviews that you've got coming up. Thank you. I hope that that's been useful, and see you in another video soon.